101.1 FM and AM 1160, and good morning to you. Dr. Ralph May visits with us. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. He comes to us having to live up to the example set by his wife in our last half hour.
Yes, I'm the husband of Janet May, chair of the Newman News book sale. So.
And she did great, so no pressure on you.
Oh, absolutely not. I feel completely calm.
I wanted to talk to you about a couple of different things and differing subjects. First of all, this past weekend, our nation observing the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and there are certainly still psychological implications for all of America as we consider what happened 20 years ago, and we get further down the road from that. There are lingering issues involved for a lot of people, especially those closest to the victims and to those sites. I think of the people of Shanksville and what they have gone through every year at this time. It's not something that just goes away with the passage of time, is it?
No, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be formal post-traumatic stress disorder to be something that you carry with you. And if you listen to the interviews with survivors and first responders who were at the scene and family members, you hear this, we're changed. You hear the statement that we're different than we were before. You know, we've come to the conclusion that life is different than it was before. Because once you've been exposed to something like this directly and even indirectly to a degree, it changes your perspective about what's important in life. You value life more. You see more what's really important and what's not important. I saw an interview with Diane Sawyer, and she was walking down to Ground Zero soon after the planes hit, and she found an office document laying in the street, and she said, and this was right 24 hours ago, this was very, very important.
Yeah.
And now it's really not that important anymore. And this kind of shock does that to people. It brings out the worst, of course, the trauma, the anxiety, the fear, the nightmares, the flashbacks for some people. But it also, once you move through it, and I don't say past it, because you kind of carry it with you to a degree, but you process it differently. It becomes part of something that gives your life more meaning and purpose. When you listen to survivors, they talk about how their purpose is talking about it, about explaining, about not letting people forget. You know, because human beings want to forget terrible things, right? That's what's happening with COVID, and we'll talk about that. But we want to forget terrible things, but sometimes you don't want to completely forget because we learn from these terrible things. We learn about life. We learn about coping. We learn about our strengths. We learn about our resilience. We learn about how to stay protected and how to stay safe. I tell you, one of the things that first responders and our preparation people go through is like the further away you get from a trauma, the more people want to just not think about it, the more less preparation, the less you have to be on guard a little bit. We live in a world where you have to maintain a certain amount of vigilance. And we don't want to have to do that, right? We want to pretend like it's all normal. That's the natural course of what human beings want. And so we don't prepare like we should, and we don't stay reticent like we should. It's hard to stay ready the longer you get away from something like 9/11, 20 years. It's hard to get away from it. And I noticed even in myself, when they replayed, of course, the planes hitting Tower 1 and Tower 2, the North and South Towers, I could feel my own heart rate go up. I could feel that activation again from the event. I could feel like it felt 20 years ago in watching the event again play out on TV. And so it's a reminder that once you go through something like this, it does stay with you. It doesn't have to control you, but it does stay with you.
And there is a danger, isn't there, in someone saying, okay, I got over it in this amount of time. You should be over it by now, too.
Yeah. That, I always worry about people say, I got over it, because what does got over it mean?
Yeah.
Pretend like it didn't bother me, pretend like it didn't matter. I just shook it off. It didn't have any impact. One of the things that in working with first responders that I try to get to do is like, you have to be professional and you have to be resilient and you have to get through these things. But you're a human being. You have reactions. If you suppress them too much, deny them too much, they come back to haunt you in different ways. So that different ways can be, substance abuse, can be irritability, can be difficulty sleeping, can be a lot of things that interfere with your life. But you don't think it's, well, I got over it, so it can't be that. Well, yeah, it can be, because those things don't just leave.
Yeah. And they being a part of you can also take you down some very, very dark roads.
Can be. And the sneaky thing about it is sometimes you don't realize that's what it is. I've worked with a lot of people through my career that as we get talking, it's like they say, I didn't realize that I was still carrying that around. because the human mind typically tries to disconnect from the trauma, disconnect from the negative, and just push through, push on, which is, the natural tendency. But if you completely shut it off entirely and you don't process through it, you don't think through it, you don't feel through it, it will find a way to come back.
Interesting to me as well the way that you've talked about it this morning. When new events come up, the situation in Afghanistan and the people at that airport and all of the news that comes out of there, when that comes up, I don't want to say it dredges up old feelings, but it certainly brings them back to the surface, doesn't it?
It refires them. It's like I call it a thread. These things are connected by threads. And when you yank on a thread, the things that are connected to that thread will come with it. And that's part of the process. These events occur and they pull back emotion. And sometimes people don't understand where the emotion's coming from, right? Why am I reacting so badly? This is terrible, but why is it so bad? Because it's chaining in and pulling that thread to the emotions that are still stuck.
Yeah.
And so it comes flooding back on you and you don't know what it is.
All right. So I want to get on to this other topic this morning, but I want to close this one off by saying for people who are still struggling in a great way and recognize it,
right?
What should they be doing right now?
Well, first of all, you have to find someone you can talk to that you trust that understands. I mean, it can be a good support system. It can be a friend that really gets you. But if the natural support system doesn't understand, you need to get some professional consultation. Here in Indiana, the great thing about this is we have one number, and we can use it for crisis, or we can use it just to call and say what's available. And that's the crisis number, which is the 877-333-2470 number. But there are plenty of counselors and private practitioners at the Guidance Center in Indiana, which is, of course, where I used to be before I retired. There's a lot of people you can talk to help you sort it out. To me, it's not saying that you have a mental illness. It's saying you might need to talk to somebody who's neutral, somebody who can help you sort these things out, who understands how the brain works when you're subjected to trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I said for those who understand what it is that they're confronting, for those who don't understand, it's really the same resource.
It's really the same resource. And the hard thing is sometimes convincing people, like, just because you go to talk to somebody doesn't mean you're seeing a shrink. You know what I mean? You're just because you need to talk to somebody doesn't mean you're crazy.
Yeah.
And that's getting over that hurdle sometimes is the most difficult one.
All right. Now, this other topic I wanted to get to with you this morning. Frankly, we could be doing a segment with Dr. Ralph every day.
That's the way it is, unfortunately. Yeah.
Mask policy, the mask mandate has certainly got highly charged emotions going in a lot of folks.
Absolutely.
And that means I think the one thing that most people will say is that we want to make sure it doesn't affect the kids.
Right.
I think that takes a level of behavior modification on the part of some of the adults too, does it not?
Well, it does, because I think, and let's be honest, nobody that I know likes wearing a mask. Nobody likes wearing a mask. Let's just set that flat out. The research as I read it is that the masks are useful as a protective, particularly for the younger kids that can't get vaccinated. And because this virus is so damn insidious, because you can have it and not know it. You can spread it and not know it, even if you're not sick. And so we have to take these precautions. The problem is that this mask issue has just become something about personal freedom. And I really think at a deeper level, it's about, I don't want to have to deal with this virus anymore.
Sure.
I want my life to be normal. I want my kids' life to be normal. I want us to be back in school. I want us to be back doing what we've always done. Everybody wants that. The thing is, this virus is mutated. And we're just going to have to be, like we were talking about vigilance, like after 9/11. We're going to have to be like that with this virus for a while, which means we're going to have to stay on guard. We're going to have to take precautions. It's like in New York, you have to watch for terrorist attacks. Well, with the virus, you wear a mask to prevent it from spreading, and particularly among the young kids, and they will read the signals from adults. My experience with kids through the years as a psychologist and working with kids is that the kids read from the adults' reactions. The kids learn from the adults' reactions. So if the adult is saying to the kid, this mask is important to protect other people and protect you, it's something we all do to protect each other, then it's a whole different reaction. It's like if it's a personal violation of your rights. And I think that we're kind of caught in this political battle over, of course, I'm a healthcare professional, so naturally I'm seeing it as a healthcare professional, that we need to be able to see this as what it is. Now, I'm going to do a little thought experiment here, Todd, and I want to make sure that everybody understands this is Dr. May making something up, okay?
Okay.
If this virus were a genetically engineered virus by a foreign power released in the United States, would we be complaining about wearing masks as much?
Good question.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Because 9/11,
Yeah.
we all pulled together because a foreign power, terrorists, attacked us. So we were unified. But this virus occurs naturally. So how do you defend against nature? How do you defend against something that occurs in the natural world? But here, the virus, if it were engineered against us, I don't think we would be having this argument.
Yeah, and a lot of this has to do as well with trust and with trying to identify an enemy.
Exactly.
And we look at, originally the enemy was the virus itself.
Yes.
Then came the vaccine, and everybody felt better. And then came Delta variant, and everybody started saying, but you said the vaccine would fix this. Now here comes the Mu variant, and they're saying, well, the Mu variant's worse than the Delta variant, and we get in that cycle. And you're right, what you said earlier. We're tired of it.
We're tired. It's exhaustion. We want it to be over. And because a lot of us aren't directly affected, thank God, in a way that we know, then it doesn't become an immediate threat. So we're not thinking it's an immediate threat. And the farther away you get away from the immediate threat, the more you just want to be normal. Of course, that's the problem in preparing for whether you're fighting the virus or you're preparing for a terrorist attack. It's the same kind of thing. You have to maintain a level of vigilance. You don't want to, but you have to.
Yeah, and there's a lot of feeling as well about you can make your own choice up about whether the mask. School districts can make up their minds about whether or not to wear the mask, and then they say, well, you did make the right choice, so we're going to make it for you.
Right.
So there's that tug of war that goes back and forth.
It's a tug of war, and we talked about this before, where the emotion of this, the anger of this, the frustration of this just spills out. And so, like you said, the enemy then becomes each other instead of the virus.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of those are things that we have to find a way to get through. I see I'm learning here.
Yeah, get through. You learn.
Rather than get past, get through. And so there's still a lot of work to do, I think, both in terms of the physical, but also in terms of the way that we handle this mentally. There's a lot of people with some frayed nerves right now, and we're going to have to ask them to be a little bit more patient with one another and with this virus too.
Patience is what is required.
He is Dr. Ralph May joining us here this morning on Indiana in the Morning. I was right. We could get you in here every single day.
You probably could. Now that I'm retired, I'm basically bored, so bring me in. I'll talk. I like to talk.
Well, I'll tell you what. I have not made an arrangement yet for the Walk for a Wonderful Life.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because we've got the walk coming up this Sunday at Mack Park. Registration at 1. The walk starts at 2. This is our 9th annual Suicide Task Force sponsored Walk for a Wonderful Life, which is really necessary. We've got to keep our eye on the ball. One thing I want to say that's very important, the suicide rate seems to have gone down in 2020, the virus year. We should not be surprised because during the acute crisis, suicide rates fall. Right after the acute crisis, they jump. We have to stay ready for that.
Will you come back and talk with me later this week about that? And bring with you whomever you want on behalf of the walk?
I can drag somebody in, I'm pretty sure.
Beautiful. Appreciate it.
No problem.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, 101.1 FM and AM 1160. Fox News next.